Senator McKenzie, are you seeking leave?
I seek leave to contribute to this statement about the Murray-Darling Basin.
I understand leave will be granted for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Well, if you listen to the Labor Party and you listen to the Greens, you'd think all is lost for the Murray-Darling Basin, when it isn't, because communities and industries right up and down the river have done the heavy lifting over the last decade, particularly in my home state of Victoria, where water licences actually deliver actual water. And it is the industries and communities up and down the basin who've seen almost 80% of the water required under the plan delivered. What else has happened over the last decade? We've got better science. So the bald numbers of gigalitres, and some say gigababble, that we've been arguing about over the last decade are meaningless, because what we actually want is a healthy river, healthy communities and healthy environmental assets that this plan was set up to deliver. The fact is, we now have better science, so we can use that existing amount of water that we've been able to get back under sometimes very trying and difficult circumstances and use it in a better way to deliver the environmental outcomes that we all want to see. And instead of using the science, the Greens and the Labor Party, the government in particular, is much more interested in getting votes in capital cities where people don't understand and, worse, don't care about the millions of people that live in the Murray-Darling Basin, that grow our food and our fibre. Because the reality is, we have studied this to death. The reason the 450 gigalitres was subject to socio-economic tests was because we know that water is wealth. We know that that is how not just the river is sustained, but our capacity to grow food and fibre is sustained. Families are sustained. Communities are sustained. And by coming after the 450 and removing the need for socio-economic impact to be assessed, evaluated, compensated for, just shows the level of disinterest and disregard this Labor government and this Minister Plibersek has for rural and regional Australia. You've heard the National Farmers Federation president come out in the recent couple of weeks calling out the Labor government on the cumulative impact of its decisions across a whole range of portfolio areas and the absolute disregard it has for the 9 million of us that don't live in capital cities, that export 70% of what we grow so that 1 in 4 Australians can have a job. And just because we live outside, you can't see us, you don't feel it, you don't know it, you think we are not worthy of actually having a government that cares about what happens. When Anthony Albanese came to government, he promised to be a Prime Minister for everyone and that no one would be left behind. Well, it is decisions that this government is bringing in on the Murray-Darling Basin Plan which will mean rural and regional basin communities will be left behind, and the suicides that will come will be on the Labor Party's head, because they care about a number, not actually about environmental, social and economic outcomes, which even Minister Burke, a Labor Party minister, when he set this up, recognised that there would be a negative, detrimental cost to taking water out of these communities. And somehow that doesn't matter anymore. I just want to say thank you to the Labor Party in Victoria, who is standing up against their mates in Canberra. That is a tough thing to do, but they're doing it because they know that coming after this water will decimate our dairy industry in northern Victoria, our horticulture industry. Buybacks, coming back in for buybacks, or a 450 gigalitres that's supposed to not be taken unless you can prove it's not going to hurt people. But they can't and they won't. And it's why this committee didn't go out into the basin to hear from real people, hear from our farmers, hear from our communities. This This bill will tear up a decade-long agreement to collaboratively manage our river system. Turns its back on how we all agreed to make sure water is there for people, for businesses and for the environment. And shame on Labor.